Welcome to the show. You are now live, L-I-V-E, with your host, the most froze, the bad boy of indie comics, the hottest ticket in all of indie comics today, the one that got away, the people's champion, the IP generating machine, the undiscovered, undeniable, unstoppable, unbreakable, creative juggernaut. CEO of Glacier Mountain Comics, it's your boy, Glacier YeahhhYuhhh. Gaming with Glacier, UFC foe, Dana White versus the world, Shout out my nigga Dana White, If you're new to the channel, please leave a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, make sure you ring that notification bell so you can be notified each and every time we go L-I-V-E live. Also, like to take a second to remind each and every one of you that I appreciate so very much watching live or on the playback out there on the tubes of view. Remember, it is not too late to donate. Over here at Glacier Mountain Comics, we're trying to get our company off the ground and running. Our debut IP awaits. The publisher is waiting on me. The world is waiting. The world hungers for it. Help us get our debut IP out to the world by donating today via paypal.me/glacier8888. paypal.me/glacier8888. Thank you. Hail and welcome to the Ice Age. See, that's the thing. If I had all the funds available, I'd have multiple teams of artists, multiple teams of... that's about it. I'm gonna do all the writing. But I'd have multiple team of artists working on multiple books simultaneously. If I had like Valiant investor money or anything like that, right? But fortunately, we gotta do it brick by brick. And so our debut IP that we're trying to bring to the world to get this company rolling, first and foremost, is SLED HEADZ. That's the first IP we're putting out. SLED HEADZ. It's a gun fu supernatural super sentai rom-com. And good news is we got issue 1 in the can already, completed, 100% complete. 60 pages, issue 1, paid for, out of pocket, off the back of the Glacier. And all we need to send to the publisher is issue 2, because at Glacier Mountain Comics, we have decided that our debut IP will be issues 1 and 2 combined in a hardback. That'll be the first of our Glacier Mountain Comics universe, SLED HEADZ. And you could help us today by donating via paypal.me/glacier8888. The world is waiting for it during this new era, this new age, the Ice Age, spearheaded by the Glacier. I'll never let you down. I'm coming to fix everything Americana, everything American entertainment, and it starts with comic books. There will be after and before the Glacier. So the new era, new age, the Ice Age. The finish line is right there. You could help us today by donating via paypal.me/glacier8888. The funny books will have a second wind. There will be a renaissance. Comic books will rise again. The new creative batteries, the new IP generators. They're right here, right now, and the time is now. Glacier Mountain Comics is here to affect mass change, mass awakening on a global scale, worldwide, through our work. These stories, these IPs, these concepts, these ideas, they must make it to the world. Finish line is right there. Step 1, brick by brick. Brick by brick. I will build my empire. SLED issue 1, 60 pages. Talk about commitment. Talk about heart. Consistency. Presence. And now we just need to start production on issue 2. SLED, the gun fu. Supernatural, Super Sentai rom-com is coming through hell and high water. It will not be stopped. Yeah, paypal.me/Glacier8888. Thank you. And remember, you can leave a like and a comment. You can do that for the free. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to listen to some Comic Watch, as they got Dan Abnett back when he was working for Valiant. They got an interview with Dan Abnett, which, by the way, I didn't know who he was, and I was studying his style just like I studied Jim Shooter's style, even though he's from more modern times, Dan Abnett. But I had no idea that it was the same guy making Valiant books when they relaunched in 2012. And the same guy's prose, or whatever you want to call it, Sword and Sorcery. He was doing work for Warhammer Fantasy, and he's even done I think he's done Warhammer 40k too. But I read so many of his books through Black Flag, or not Black Flag, Black Library. That's what the publishing house is for all of Warhammer Fantasy Sword and Sorcery novels. And I studied Dan Abnett's style hardcore. He was killing it on the junk. They call Black Library the junk food of Sword and Sorcery, but it's so fucking good. And Dan Abnett was killing it. I was studying his style without even knowing it was him. I think one of these days I'm gonna have to EFAP or Observations podcast too. I'm sure it'd be fire takes from Rob Liefeld, followed by fire takes from the Glacier. Woo! Alright, here we go. Yeah.
Valiant Warriors, we have a very, 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 very special episode for you. The legendary Dan Abnett is joining us today to answer all our questions about Rye and Fallen World and a whole bunch. We just got a ton of stuff that we got to get to here. But check it out. Before you get started, remember, support your local comic book store. Support your local comic book stores. Rye.
Yeah, Dana White versus Nate Diaz. Could you imagine? Casino parking lot brawl. Dana, my ninja Dana from the mean streets of Boston. Yeah. Don't ever count out Dana White. He's a bulldog. Yeah.
It's coming out. Don't forget to pre-order. Rye Volume 6 also on the way. Get it if you haven't already. And let's get right into this.
Get him, Dana. Get him, Dan.
So, Dan the man. Okay. So many questions. I don't even know where to start. But let's start with Ryan. So, you do have some history with Valiant. But the first question that popped into my mind when I saw that you were writing Fallen World is, why these particular set of characters? Like, what drew you to Rye and just like the 4000, I guess, 2 AD world at this point? Like, what about that in particular drew you in that were like, I want that?
The simple answer is I was asked to do it. That's the simple answer. But somebody else was smart enough to figure that it was my kind of thing. Because the moment they asked me to do it, I went, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. So it was Lisa, the editor. She contacted me. I'd worked with her a long time ago when she was at Marvel, and she knew my kind of track record, if that's the best way of putting it. I liked SF, but I liked cosmic stuff. And she obviously thought I would be a good fit there, and asked me. And immediately when she started telling me what it involved, I was pretty familiar with it. I mean, as you say, I've worked for Valiant a long time in the past. I'm pretty aware of the universe and how it works. And I thought that's just perfect for me, and something that really appeals to me. And weirdly, it was as it were the other way around, because she asked me to do Rye first. So that was the book she wanted me to do. So she said, it's coming out of this event called Fallen World. I want you to write Rye as an ongoing series. And so I started work on that. I'd written a couple of scripts. And at that point, because I was referring back to this event that was going to happen but hadn't been written, Valiant said, do you know what? Would you like to write Fallen World as well to build the foundation for what you're doing? And I went, yeah, sounds like a perfect match. So I then sort of worked backwards chronologically, wrote Fallen World, and then carried on with Rye. So it was great. It was that's kind of a dream job when somebody comes along, knows what you do, and says, I think you'd be good for this, and you go, you're absolutely right. So.
That's really interesting. So how did that color your experience, like going forward with Rye, doing Fallen World kind of
get out of this
after you'd already started with Rye? Did that change the direction you wanted to go with Rye, or how did that play together?
No, it didn't really change the direction, because I had a pretty solid idea, because Valiant had already constructed what the main beats of Fallen World were. So I had a fairly strong launch pad anyway. They wanted this to happen and this to happen and this to happen. But it meant that I could connect. I could sort of segue those things in more solidly, make the connections there rather than just picking up a baton from another runner, as it were. So that worked really, really nicely. But I think it also gave me
It's fucking bullshit. I was fucking up Nate Diaz. Stopped and slapping his ass. Dana White had that shit in the... I don't know how to fucking get out of submissions in this game. It's fucking bullshit. I was fucking him up. I'm definitely rematching. My Ninja Dana even put him on his ass. Look at that. Bam. About to end the fight. Gayness.
You're in a lot of
Gay.
trouble the entire time when you're this good in the submission.
All right, here's Bruce Buffer now with the official decision.
I wish they'd show the round cards. I know I was winning. Look at his face and look at mine. Dana was fucking him up. Fuck. Fuck you, Nate Diaz. Rematch right now, bitch. Yeah.
confidence to do the things I was going to do anyway, but with greater surety that I knew exactly where they were coming from. So particularly the stuff involving Bloodfather and everything like that, having set that up, I had the confidence to then move on with it rather than going, oh, who is this character? How's it been handled? And everything like that. I knew where it was coming from. So, yeah, it didn't change much, but it focused me.
Very cool. The character work, I think, is something that you can immediately latch onto, and I think that bridge really sells well. Characters like Bloodfather that feel well developed. When you go into Fallen World, into Rai, it feels like a natural continuation of it. Were there characters that you had kind of created for Rai that you felt you could flesh out more in Fallen World since you worked backwards like that?
A little, but I think it was more a matter of making sure that characters like Lula and Bloodfather and obviously Ryan Rajin were very carefully carried over, because it's a weird. The top of the brief to me with Ryan, this is what I discussed with Lisa a lot, was the idea that this was an opportunity. It's Valiant Universe, which is great. I love working in an established universe and playing with the toys and all the continuity. But with Fallen World 4002. It's kind of an open book. There's massive amounts of world building and creativity that go on, because I'm not sort of knocking into other books and disrupting their continuity. So there was an enormous amount of creation, and one of the things that Lisa said early on was let's establish what the range of this world is. That it's it is. Almost anything can happen. Let's show those things. Let's establish the wide range of possibilities there are there. So in some respects, there's a lot of complexity in the early issues of Rye, because I'm building up and showing that variation for the purposes of, like I said, getting it established early on. But in other respects, it's a really, really simple book. If there are new readers out there, for instance, who've not picked this up yet, this is not a book where you need to know a lot about what's going on. It is a simple quest story. It's Rai, who is this warrior, with his, let's call it sidekick, Rajin, who is actually and a different prototype of the same system that produced him. But it's just the two of them sort of walking the earth. I mean, it's as simple as that. They are walking the earth. They are looking for the last dregs of Bloodfather, who is an AI who keeps replicating and coming back together again. And if he does, that's enormously dangerous. So he's sworn to stopping this and finding the offspring, which are these kind of backup subroutines that if they amalgamate, they will bring Father back. That couldn't be simpler. I mean, it's a warrior and his companion looking for a thing, and that journey takes them through different stories, as we see in the ongoing series. So there's really not a lot. The rest of it is interesting to learn, and you learn it as you go along, and you learn it in Fallen World because that sets it up. But you don't need to know any of that, because it's more about that ongoing journey and the things they discover as they go along. So you were talking about character. And character, to me, is the absolutely vital part of it. Yes, the world building is complex and fun, and that's the entertainment value of the book. But unless the characters themselves are strong, it's just going to become a little bit like a kind of, walking tour. There's going to be no drama in it. So to me, the great thing was to make sure that those key characters, obviously Ryan Rajin, Bloodfather as well, who plays an increasing role in it, and Luke as the sort of secondary storyline. We alternate with as we start to go along. Are solid. We like them. They're interesting. That it was a matter of doing things like developing the fact that Rajin, for instance, has a sense of humour, and often says slightly odd, direct, sort of no filter things to Rai, who is very focused and serious about everything, and that kind of balance. And so to me, once we've hooked you with the great visuals and the idea that this is a wild world, what we hope will keep you there is the fact that you're quite interested in or possibly like the characters. Even Bloodfather, I mean, he's a monstrous creation, but he's quite an interestingly charismatic monstrous creation. So
absolutely,
keeping that sort of simple. That's one of the things I like about it, is that the complexity of everything builds as you go along and is great. But you don't need to know anything. It's not like picking up another book that's set right in the heart of an established comics universe, where you need to know what happened in that story and this thing over here and what the history of that character is, which is great and part of the fun of reading comics. Don't get me wrong, but this is really, you can pick up that first issue. You said it's August. It's coming out. We're collecting the first 5 issues in a trade, which you can pre-order now. And as you say, support comic book shops. Let's do that. Let's go out there and make sure you place your order in. So you can read those 5 issues in trade form at the same time that issue 6. Well, let's also order that. Issue 6 comes out and after the hiatus. And you can just go straight into that. And now if you want to go and read Fallen World as well, that's fantastic. And indeed, go back and read the previous runs on Rai, which are collected in trade form, because they're great too. I was looking at those. But you don't need to know anything. And to me, that's the mark of an engaging comic book, where what's happening right now is the bit that matters. And you're not sitting there going, who's this? Why is this happening? So that's kind of my focus. Let's make these interesting people.
I can dig that. That's definitely one of the things I think that draws a lot of people in the Valiant is the accessibility factor. So that's something that is really important to keep when you're developing a new, just a new direction for a whole branch of books.
Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned that I was actually curious about. So when you were writing the website,
Yeah, Dana White versus the world, baby. Get him, Dana.
was it a situation where, people that are going into it kind of have a preconceived notion of who Bloodshot is? So was it like one of those things where you're like, well, I'm not sure if this is going to land, or were you confident in how well he was written that you're like, I can take a former, because it's really not Bloodshot, but you can take a hero and make him a villain and it doesn't turn into like people are mad about Parallax kind of situation?
I think that is always going to be a danger. If you've got a character that is very popular and a great character, Bloodshot's a great character, there's always going to be the danger that people go, I don't like what you've done with him, I don't like that, oh, that's not right. I think with this, it's in keeping with everything. Any time a story is set, as it were, in the future of an established universe, I think there's almost a responsibility to try and do something different. I love it when you're reading something that's set in the far future of something you know very, very well, and you see those things crop up, those sort of either characters or concepts. They go, oh, this is the same universe, but that's changed from the version of this universe that I know, and you sort of get involved in that. So having Bloodshot in it, and having a few other bits and pieces in it, Eternal Warrior, as we know, turns up in those first 5 issues as well. And you go, okay, that's anchored me. I know that this is a universe that I understand, but they're not. I don't think they should be the same, because they're not being the same shows a passage of time, shows the fact these things evolve. And Bloodshot, because of the very nature of what he is, this sort of nanotechnology being, is ripe for transformation. It's absolutely right. An enormously powerful AI can take that over and transform it and make something else out of it. And I think that's really interesting. And without giving you spoilers, issue 6, new arc, where I'm going to go further with that, and we're going to start to look more at what that is and uncover other things about it, which I hope will be really, really interesting. I hope it will be interesting. So, yeah, I have confidence. I couldn't imagine readers going, oh, this is awful, and throwing it away because they didn't like it. But I did hope they would be intrigued, and I did hope they would be pleased that they could see that kind of connective tissue with the present-day Valiant universe.
Very cool. I love Bloodfather, super cool character, but I kept finding myself being drawn to Lula. And when issue 3, I believe, came around with Rai, and Lula makes her appearance, trying to reach out to Rai, after we saw how she kind of ended things in Fallen World, I was really excited to see that connection being made. So is there any kind of a bigger plan for Lula coming up in the future?
Yes, there certainly is. I think it's quite interesting because in some respects Rai is how do we put it? He's kind of the saviour of the human race, or he's the saviour of the population of New Japan, who were living there in this sort of blissful ignorance. They're being ruled by this despotic AI. And Rai steps up and he confronts his father, and he literally brings everything crashing down. So he saves everybody from this fate that they don't really realise they're suffering. But in doing so, he literally brings them down to this level of survivors on the planet's surface, deprived of all the privilege and luxury and technology that they had before. So they're trying to build again. And I think in most stories you'd expect Rai as that champion, and we see this at the start of Fallen World. You expect Rai to be the one who then leads them into rebuilding the civilization. And sort of true to that sort of warrior nature of his, he goes, well, I don't think I'm going to be very good at that, and I don't think that's my responsibility. There are other people who could do that better, or other people who could do that full stop. I need to finish the job I started. He knows that an awful lot of people, particularly the humans, hate him for saving them. He saved them, and he's getting no gratitude at all. And he realises that if he's going to, having sort of done such a drastic thing to try and stop Father, he needs to follow that through to the ultimate conclusion. He needs to make sure the Father's not coming back. So he essentially walks off and leaves them to it. And what I like with Lula, obviously I wanted to touch on her anyway, because she is an important supporting character in this story. But I love the idea that she's almost left to do the thing that in another story Rai would be doing. She's the one leading the charge in terms of trying to rebuild a community, a diverse community. Let's face it. They've made pact with the mutants and the other creatures. They're trying to build a community that at the very least is protecting itself against the predations of Bloodfather and the more powerful people around. And I quite like the idea that she's she has that sort of thrust upon her. She assumes that she's going to be sort of an assistant and a helper, probably the tech expert, and suddenly it's like, it's down to me to do this, and start to do this. And we see, obviously, the other thing I thought was really nice was the evolution of her from being Lula, having been trained by Spylock, to actually sort of becoming that. She's sort of adopting that mantle and saying, I'm going to do this. And in her own way, taking certain risks, because we've seen her already playing around with technology and the sort of digital linkage which we know that Bloodfather can exploit, and going, I think I'm good enough at this to make sure he can't get at me, but maybe not. And again, we will see that. So yes, from 6 onwards we will see her storyline continuing in I think some pretty interesting ways.
Very cool. I think it really bubbles up in interesting ways too, with her interaction with Rai while she's hacking him. And he says, you know, a part of being human is staying in touch with your friends. Yes. And I feel like that's part of it being thrust on her, is, you know, touching in on these elements of rebuilding.
Yeah, and the fact that although she's clearly very competent and very capable, she's not beyond making mistakes, which I think is something we learn in that particular issue. She wants to contract Rai, and she essentially takes him down and puts him in a kind of fused state coma, which leaves Raijin all on his own, makes him incredibly vulnerable. And she didn't mean to do that, and they have to work their way out of that. But it also means that going forward, she's got decisions to make. You know, she does things and they could go wrong, because they've already gone wrong once. And you know, how big a price is she prepared to pay if she makes a mistake like that again? You know, how great is her technological skill to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen? So yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, she is like Raijin. Obviously, she's another voice talking to Rai about what he is. Yeah. I mean, obviously we know he's human and synthetic at the same time, and he's very much ruled by the sort of the machine logic, the sort of hunter-killer instinct of, this is a problem, I will accomplish it with a very swift, direct thing to do. And he keeps talking about, and it's a trope, I know, but he keeps talking about, you know, sort of trying to understand the human part of himself and learn to be more human. But I think, as you, and again, I don't want to spoil it, but as we see by the time we get to the end of issue 5, we realise that actually the way he interprets that is not what you expect it to be at all. He comes out with a declaration of intent, and you go, really? I didn't really see that. So I like the fact that Raijin, who is technically much more artificial, is the one going, is that a good idea? Is that good? Isn't it time to think about this on the kind of human level? Rai's MOs tends to be, you know, if an individual or even a small community suffers because of what I'm doing, that's okay, because there's a bigger picture and the bigger price is important. And Raijin is going, yeah, but can't we along the way help them as well? You know, do they have to be sacrificed for the greater good? And that's the thing that's going to build. And I think that's an interesting lesson, that it doesn't have to be necessarily binary. It doesn't have to be, this must be sacrificed in order for this bigger thing to be achieved. That maybe you can accomplish both of those things.
So that's actually a really good point I wanted to touch on too. With Rai and the way he approaches adapting to his, you know, I guess flowering humanity, however you want to put it. It's almost ironically pushing him in the other way, where he's like cold and calculating, so he's almost more machine-like than he was before. So was that something that you just wanting to play with that dynamic, did that kind of just grow organically as you were writing it, or was that something that you went into it like, this hasn't really been touched on yet, so this is something that I want to tackle?
It was something that occurred to me early on, but I did find, you're right, it did grow organically. The more I wrote it, the more I went, it's sort of writing itself where his character and personality is going, which is great. When you see that happening, from a writer's point of view, when you see that happening, you kind of run with it. And I thought that was really interesting, is that, you know, he sort of, essentially from the beginning of Rai, he's saying, the series, he's saying, you know, I want to be human. I want to stop being a warrior. I want to stop doing all these things. I want to rest and learn what it is to be human, because I've been the machine warrior for such a long time. But he realizes, as it were, he's got that one last job to finish, and he realizes the machine warrior is the bit that can do that best and most efficiently. So you're right. In order to make his way towards being human, he's kind of put the human bit on hold and gone full on sort of android warrior, synthetic warrior, in order to get the job done. And that does make him appear to be extremely tough. I hope he's still quite sympathetic. I know there's a danger that he wouldn't be, and I think Raijin is the important balancing factor there to show you that Rai is not sort of irredeemable. But if he was on his own, I think you'd be going, my God, he's just a stone killer doing these. And I think it's interesting that he's effectively hunting for Bloodshot. I mean, he's not Bloodshot anymore, but he's effectively hunting for Bloodshot. And I always think there is this mysterious, entangled family relationship, even in the iconography of those two characters. You know, one it almost seems to be a futuristic extrapolation of the other. And the idea that you've got the machine warrior hunting for the other machine warrior, and once he can deal with him, he can be human. I think he's kind of, it's not so much a paradox, it's just an interesting contradiction. You know, the idea that he has to be more machine to get this job finished in order to become human at the end of it. I think the obvious route, again, would have been for him to become more and more human, trying to be more and more human as he went along, and then sort of mess up his quest because he wasn't coldly analytical enough to do that, and that be the tension that actually by the time he got to the end of his quest, he was too human to be ruthless enough to finish it. And in fact, we're seeing a weird reversal of that, the fact that he's becoming more and more ruthless and more sort of unfeeling towards life forms, human and otherwise, as he goes forward. Again, that's something that from issue 6 on we're going to smack us in the face.
That's super cool because I mean, you're right. You hook into this story with a pretty simple premise of these two people walking out into the world trying to find these remnants of Father, but ultimately what you're attached to is the struggle for humanity from Rai, and how you see that perception of humanity from all the different characters. Is that importance of what vision of humanity they impart on Rai something that you look at when bringing new characters into the fold?
Very much so, yeah, I think so. And I think it's that idea that if you are literally human, or you have been, if you are an artificial, positronic human who is absolutely human in every other respect than that they were created artificially, that you think and feel as a human, and that is all that matters. And therefore, that's what, you know, Rai is essentially human from the get-go because of the way he's been constructed to absolutely perfectly replicate what a human being is. And I think that's going to matter more and more and more. And again, I keep saying I don't want to spoil it, but in issue 6, there is a character that we introduce who really begins to show that positioning of in relation to Rai, somebody who is sort of been sort of scarred by technology and wants to sort of embrace their humanity again, and has sort of lost sight of it and feels almost like they've been victimized by Rai. So I think that's a very important thing to do. If Rai stopped at the beginning of issue 1 and went, do you know what, I am human, I shouldn't worry about it, let's go and I'll get the job done. But I think he's almost overthinking it. And I think in some respects Raijin is sort of slightly jealous because Raijin has already accomplished it. He's already got a kind of nuanced personality, but he can't grow and evolve in the way that Raijin goes. He's sort of a little boy who could never grow up, literally. His mind is, you know, so he's almost that conscience figure walking at his side going, like I said, you know, is that a good idea? Should we be doing that? Could we all stop and do that? And I like I sort of like the understated way they play off each other sometimes, even in that first issue where rather than, you know, introducing Rai in the most sort of splashy way of whipping into action with his sword, you know, the first we see of him is they've stopped and he's repairing the car and he's got the hood up and we don't even see him properly, he's behind the hood. And Raijin, he's left Raijin to do the confrontation with the bandits who turned up, and then, you know, sort of almost wearily, he finally appears and goes, oh, I suppose I have to do it. I think that's very human, right? You know, if he was able to see himself doing that, you go, that's a very human, big brotherly thing to do. Oh, all right, okay, then, you know. But he doesn't recognise that in himself yet. I think he doesn't trust himself. But I think that's because of what he's been for such a long time. He doesn't realise that being human is just being himself. He thinks it's kind of another quest he's got to go on in order to find his human self. It's there all along. It's right there in everything he does. He just isn't recognising it.
That's so it's beautiful almost, because there's this push and pull that you're seeing in every issue with him understanding humanity and how it relates to his own self. Yeah. And I feel like even after, you know, if we did 2-3 dozen of these issues, you could still look at that fundamental push and pull and say, you know, that's humanity. And
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think that in another typically human trait of it is the idea that we would you were just saying there that the idea that he's become more machine in order to accomplish his quest. We you know, in those first 5 issues, we established that he's done that because it's the best way of doing it. But in some respects, it's making him hate machines and machine life more than ever before. So he's almost becoming what he hates in order to accomplish his task. And I think that's almost sort of, that's a contradiction. There's almost hypocrisy, which is a typically human thing to hold two completely conflicting ideas in your head and not have a problem with that at all. And again, he's making a very logical decision, so a very Spock-like, I will do this, when it's done I can do this instead. And you're going, no, you're already being human because you're doing something that sort of doesn't make sense. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, that's phenomenal. So one thing I did want to ask you is about Ryan being on his journey. Since Fallen World started, you've been very on point with like who you're introducing as like some of the supporting cast, in introducing like the Geomancer and the Eternal Warrior, because they're very human.
Yes,
you know, so they're a huge contrast to like Rai and Raijin. Is that something that was kind of intentional, or was it more like, well, these are just like, I just want to play with these toys, or like how did they get involved as being like really big central characters, and how I guess like looking forward, like what should be looking for as far as them being involved in Rai?
Yeah, well, I think if nothing else, in a very, talking about human characteristics of holding more than one opposing view at the same time, it was for all of those reasons. As me as writer, I was going, they're cool characters, I want to use them, but also, very interesting. And also, I was thinking, you know, as with Bloodshot, I was saying, I wanted to use as quickly as possible some established Valiant elements, so that it was absolutely clear we were in the Valiant universe. And you're thinking, well, who is literally immortal and could still be around? It's Gilad, obviously it is. So he's the person we should meet. And the Geomancer and the thriving or the return to thriving life of the Earth is an important theme. So that makes sense as well. So yes, of course, it would be obvious that they would encounter them. And I hesitated actually at first putting them in because I thought, oh gosh, they're very, very similar. You've got this kind of immortal swordsman warrior dedicated to the protection of a smaller young companion traveling the world, and it's like, is that just not like meeting like? Is that not going to be boring? And I thought, no, actually, let's see how different they are. The fact that the Geomancer and Raijin sort of get on pretty well. They don't know each other. They sort of get on very well, and they kind of collaborate. But Gilad, who has literally lived for thousands of years, and he's incredibly focused and dedicated, like Rai, but nevertheless he's going, you know, calm down, Rai. Just calm down. You're too intense. And that's coming from a man who has spent thousands of years being intense. But he is knowing how to level that intensity out so that he still cares. He cares, and things matter, and even the small things matter, because he knows that cumulatively over thousands of years, if he hadn't bothered about the small things, none of the big things would have mattered anyway. And he's trying to impart that to Ryan, and that obviously leads to that encounter in issues 4 and 5, and particularly that kind of payoff of that scene where he accuses Rai of essentially using Raijin as an instrument, as a weapon to on his quest. You know, he's not treating him like a person or a brother or showing any kind of emotional connection to him at all. He's just sort of a tool to be used to do this with. And in contrast with that is obviously Gilad's relationship with the Geomancer, which is properly sort of paternal or fraternal. You know, he cares about the person as much as he cares about her role as the Geomancer, and that's why their relationship thrives. And you're kind of expecting Rai to turn around and go, no, I love him dearly, really, he is actually my brother, blah, 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 blah. But he doesn't. He goes, yep, he's just an instrument to be used. And I think that's the moment where you go, these guys are so similar, these pairs are so similar, but in fact there is a vast distance here. And I hope it leaves you with the sort of question mark as to, is it, as it looks obviously from the outside, is it that Gilad's right and Rai just hasn't grasped it and Rai is too cold to grasp it? Is it that way? Is the human attitude, the experienced human attitude of the veteran Gilad, the attitude that matters? Or is in a terrifyingly cold way, is Rye actually right? You know, do you know what I mean? You know, is he going? Do you know what? Nothing matters apart from the big picture. And we kind of leave that. I think I bias that scene towards Gilad, so we go. You know, Gilad, listen to Gilad. He's the one who got it right. Right, you've got a little bit of here. Calm down. But never that. I think that still exists there. You're thinking, well, it's still Rye's book. He is the hero. He is doing a good thing, and he's got a kind of logical grasp of. Analytical grasp of the situation. Maybe his way is the right way, and maybe it just seems wrong and cruel because it's not the human way of doing it. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's. What I didn't want was for one to beat the other, for there to be either physically or an argument whereby one of them turns out to be correct. You know, I wanted them to both to sort of be correct, and it was a matter of we've got opposing views. How do we sort this out and kind of agree to differ? And that was sort of where I took it. So yeah. So that was why I used. That's why I used. Apart from the fact that the Eternal Warrior is just enormously cool. That's why. And I wanted to show that contrast. Even though, as I say, at the beginning, I hesitated. I was thinking, hang on, it's like these two meet these two. It's like aren't they too similar? And I mean, no, the similarity is the very thing I need to play with to show that contrast. And just using bits, like I said, using bits of the Valiant universe, like Bloodshot, like Eternal Warrior, like Geomancer, and like, I will not say the words, but some of the things that are going to appear in the next arc, where you're going to go, oh, really? And so there's going to be a couple of things. One in particular, there's a few issues down the line, but look out for it, where something is going to emerge into our story, which is full-on solid Valiant universe, sort of present-day Valiant universe. But even though I've told you this, you will not see it coming. When it arrives, you're going to go, what? The last thing you expected. So, and again, to me, that both makes the future Valiant universe that we're playing with distinct, but it also makes it quite clearly the future of a universe we know, which is, to me, a very important thing to do.
That's cool. We're going to be messaging each other real quick as soon as that issue comes out.
Oh, I gotta calm the fanboy down. I'm hyping up a little bit over here. Hype overload. Okay.
It's really interesting that, like, you had talked about, what you hope keeps us around is that more nuanced struggle for humanity and kind of what Rye's going through. And after 30 minutes of us digging into it, I think it's easy to say that that's kind of what's keeping us hooked in it. But when you're reading the story, Bloodfather is ultimately the catalyst that's kind of driving this forward. So is there anything you can tell us more about kind of his overarching plan, or what's in store for Bloodfather?
A little. I mean, I think he embodies the motivations that drove Father, which is to control to control a vast population, preferably a world or a big environment that can essentially serve him and almost worship him because he's got that godlike status. And now he's essentially in indestructible form, which sort of is promoting him to a godlike status. There's going to be some wrinkles to that. There's going to be some unexpected twists. In sort of issues 6 and 7, we're going to become absolutely certain, if we weren't certain already, of just how dangerous and powerful he is. But we're going to see flaws in what he does, but actually aspects to it where again, they're coming from unexpected angles. We see there's parts to what he is that are not quite as simple and profound as we think they are. That there is a subtlety there. I'm trying not to give story away, but obviously, So he's the motivating factor. I wanted to make him cool. I think the idea that he's sort of, as it were, technologically infecting his soldiers to do his bidding, and they are themselves, again, yet another contrast in the story. They are innocent humans who are being grabbed with nanotechnology and turned into these completely ruthless killers. And we see Gilad and Rye sort of fighting them and realizing they have no choice but to kill them, but nevertheless they are essentially innocent people. So it's again that horrible clash between machine and human and what's that. And then again, and this is something we see through Lula and we saw in Fallen Worlds, you've got the positronics population who are legitimately proper sentient beings and therefore effectively human, who are prejudiced against and being considered to be secondary, and because they are machines technically. So I think one of the interesting things about this future Earth is it's not all one thing. It's not like a kind of, I don't know, Star Trek vision of the future. I love Star Trek, by the way. That wasn't a thing. But you know, this thing where everything is absolutely uniformly connected via, you know, Starfleet, and it's a bright, brilliant future. These is literally a patchwork of different things, and there are different factions, and there aren't. It's not like there are evil bad factions. Well, there are some, obviously, but it's not like there are evil factions and then good factions, and you know, how do we fight the good fight between the two of them? Actually, there are just different groups of people who legitimately have personal interests and personal every right to be there, whose interests don't necessarily match with those of people around them. Sound like a world you recognise? It does to me, and I think that's an interesting. I think that's an interesting structure to build into that kind of stuff, because I think it's. I know comics can be spectacularly exciting when they're very simple, where it's good versus evil, etc. Yeah, and that's great. But I think when you're playing around with science fiction ideas, it's quite interesting to have that kind of those sort of grey areas of the way dynamics, cultures, societies get on with each other or don't get on with each other, and not be able to say from the outset, well, obviously these guys have got to win because they're the good guys, and these guys have got to lose because they're bad guys, you know. But it actually becomes a much more complicated dynamic than that. But again, no spoilers, but in the next arc we're going to introduce a new faction that we haven't seen before, about new stuff. This is new characters, which I think are very cool. I think they're brilliant, and they present yet another sort of angle to that. It's almost like we're slowly uncovering this Earth that is full of different, almost like little kingdoms or fiefdoms of individual interest, and they've all been getting on with themselves happily for probably quite a long time, and then Rise just crashed New Japan down there, and there's this enormous, essentially refugee influx of people going, we need to settle, we need to colonize, we need land, we need cities, we need these things, we need to be protected. And a lot of people who've been there for a long time going, who are these guys, and why have they taken our forests, and what that was our river, and you know, this kind of stuff. So we're going to see those things sort of develop where even if you don't like people, you understand where they're coming from. You understand why they feel the way they feel about certain things. And I think that's quite a cool thing. And you said that, you know, sort of the characters is a reason that we want to draw people to this book. And you've said, you know, Bloodfather is a really cool villain, and that's another motivating factor for the quest and why people want to read these books. I would counter that and say, at this point, there is one reason to read this book, and that is because the art is phenomenal. So I hope I'm doing a good job with the story, and if people who love the story and the characters, that's great. But as far as I'm concerned, from the moment the first pages dropped, I went, oh my God, look at this. I just read it for the art. I mean, it's like, and that itself, probably as much as, if not even more than writing Fallen World, and have, you know, I said Fallen World gave me the confidence to develop the themes I was developing more strongly. Just seeing Juan Joe's art and realising that he got it, that he was visualising everything in the most beautiful way. Incredible realism, and incredible acting, and incredible action, and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes there's a sense that that's all that was really needed in order to create a world, and you can sort of. I'm gonna have what was that? I'm coming back to this thing in a second.
Hi Derbs, this is where you'll cut 3719.
Actually, give me a second. Fix my lighting here a little bit. There we go. It's a bit better.
I know. I'm sorry, what was I talking about? Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy, a wonderful comic, and no, that's...
I'm Groot.
Yeah, I was waxing lyrical. Shall I start that again? I'll start that again. To me, the biggest draw of the comic is the art. You know, whatever else you like about it, the art is a fantastic thing, and it just allowed me to. When you're world building, you're creating new stuff, and you kind of don't know how it's going to look, and you know that you're working with a professional artist. It's going to be great no matter what, but is it going to be just great, or is it going to is it going to be great in the way that you hope it's going to be that will make people look at it? You know, sort of, it's a very difficult thing to say because, again, it sounds like I'm dissing other artists, and I'm not. But when I saw Juanjo's art, I realised that he was completely invested in the world, and he was visualising in this incredibly, sort of immaculately detailed way. And it meant that I also then had the confidence to not just to do the big explosive things, you know, stampeding dinosaurs and huge sword fights and all the other cool stuff, but actually that it was so realistic, it felt so realistic, I could do the quieter things as well, and it wouldn't become boring. So I could have a conversation, just a conversation for a couple of pages in the middle of I think in issue 6 there's a lovely storm and there's forests and that kind of stuff, and people will draw that beautifully, but it could end up being a kind of a slow patch in the story where you go, it's just people talking. Do you know what I mean? No matter how good the dialogue is. But knowing how beautifully he draws it, you go, no, we can afford to have that conversation because he will make it look great. We will believe that there are two people having an important conversation and we will live it. So artists being superb at artists are always superb at doing the big stuff. You know, the spectacular spaceship, the enormous fight, the amazing stuff, the amazing choreography of a battle or whatever like that. And sometimes the quieter stuff, like a conversation or a simple sequence, is less appealing, and therefore it doesn't feel as vivid. And in order to make a world like this feel real, everything needs to be vivid. The quiet stuff needs to be as vivid as the big stuff. Do you see what I mean? And I think that's the thing that just kind of astonished me when I started to see the pages. I was, because we're working quite a way ahead. It was delicious because we had like month turnaround to get this stuff done and get loads of issues in the drawer. So I think we're up to about issue 9 in the drawer as well. So we're really doing well. So I'd written a couple of scripts at least, if not 3 issues, by the time I first saw the art and realised what I was working towards. And it was this. I just thought it was extraordinary. I mean, he's an incredibly talented artist, but it was the way he did that. I think a really good example is the second issue, the one with the sort of smart home where it's been there for forever and it's run by the woman who just wants to make them breakfast and give them a cup of coffee. You know, there would be a real danger in something that was essentially as quiet and literally domestic as that. But it would be a dull episode, you know, sitting around, you know, there is a kind of Stepford Wives threat about it. There's a background menace that's there, but you don't want to make that menace obvious by having sort of attacking them with an action page too. You know, you want it to be really subdued and apparently normal. The abnormality is the fact that you've got a samurai warrior and his robot sidekick who've turned up at his house that's apparently miraculously preserved in the middle of an apocalyptic wilderness. And then the housewife opens the door and says, do you want some breakfast? Come in. And you go, that's the weird part. The ordinariness of it is the weird part. But and he sells that ordinariness so well that I think after a few pages of that, you're going, I need to get out of this house now. Without doing anything obviously showy and big to telegraph that it is a bad situation they're getting themselves, or at least an odd situation they're getting themselves into. That to me is the reason you read the book, is the art. You know, the story's okay. But
I have to ask, just kind of like piecing this together, being able to write or get a direction on Rye and then go back on Fallen World and build that up and then kind of get introduced to the artwork a few issues later. How was that on your end, and did you have to do any rewrites to kind of cater towards this artist and flesh things out in a different direction?
I thankfully didn't have to do much, although I would have happily rewritten all sorts of different things to make it work better. If the art had come in with a particular style that didn't suit something I was doing but suited a different approach, I would have done that too. But yeah, that first issue came in and I realised that everything that I hoped would be good was in fact extraordinary, and that's a kind of big shot in the arm when you go forward and go, okay, we can really move with this. So the second issue then, but it did give me the confidence moving forward to go, do you know what, I'm gonna do this, because now I know that Juanjo can handle that and he's going to do an extraordinary job. a slight spoiler, but there is. We've seen it a little bit in issue 3 with a sort of journey into cyberspace, sort of the virtual world with Luna and stuff like that. There's going to be some more of that from issue 6 onwards. And in some respects, there were certain things in the book that we mentioned them already. You know, Rai the Robot Warrior's search for his humanity and his what it means to be human, and Adventures in Cyberspace. Boy, are they cliches. Those two things are huge cliches. The sort of thing where you go, I've seen that done so many times. Is it really worth going back to those sorts of things? So the only reason I embarked upon them was because I thought, do you know what? I think Rai's artificial being searching for his humanity, that will play out, as we talked earlier, will play out in a different way. So therefore it's worth doing. It's not a cliche, it's a trope, and we're going to explore it in a different way. And similarly, Spylock diving into cyberspace, virtual reality, hey, which sounds so 90s now, do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm thinking, that's not going to work, really, but I needed to use it in issue 3, and then I saw what John Joe was capable of doing with that, and oh my word, wait till you see the next part of that. And I went, wait a minute, this isn't going to seem like a stale trope that we're revisiting. There's some really cool stuff we can play around with now, and that's again, so that gave me the confidence to do that.
Okay, that leads me to my next question then, because as you mentioned, you're balancing, you're juggling a lot of hats. This is something I mentioned in some of the reviews that I've done on the issues as they've been coming out. I mean, you have like a Kung Fu, The Legend Continues kind of element going with like the road trip with the Samurai Warriors, and then like Mad Max, and like, I could literally just name off like a gajillion IPs that it's like. So when you have such a smooth relationship with the artist like you have with Juan Jose Rip, how does that help you balance? Is it like, okay, well, now...
Dude, Juan Jose Reap is such a fucking phenomenal artist. Oh, I hit up Tomas Giorello the other day to fucking see if I can get some work for him going. One of my favorite artists from Valiant, Tomas Giorello. And he answered me back. He says he can't. He's got an exclusive contract with Dinesh Shamdasani over there at Bad Idea, so good for him, man. It's nice to see a lot of those artists just stick with Dinesh, sign those exclusive contracts after the foul shit they did with Heather Antos when they took Valiant Comics back. But fuck, I wish I could get Tomas to draw something for me, but it's an exclusive contract. But that's good, man. They're showing that loyalty to Dinesh. I'll be right back. Alright, we back. Remember, it is not too late to donate. Send donos my way via paypal.me/glacier8888. paypal.me/glacier8888. All donos will go directly into production of issue 2 of SLED, so we can get our debut IP out to the world. Yeah, help us today by donating via paypal.me/glacier8888. SLED, the gun fu, supernatural, super, sentai, rom-com. Stay alert and stay tuned. Announcements coming soon. Yeah. Also, go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment. You can do that for the free. And I appreciate you. And you, and you, and you. Each and every one of you, like you wouldn't believe. Thank you so much for watching live or on the playback. It's greatly appreciated. Yeah. Now back to Dan Abnett talking about Fallen World and Rai from Valiant Comics and his run.
I'm confident to do whatever, or is it like we can do so much, like I don't know, like I gotta streamline it? Like how do you balance that out? Because it's very rare that you see a book that has so many different elements handled so well.
Well, thank you. First of all, I don't know. It really is just sort of the story is driving itself, in as much as it feels strong to me, and I want to go where it's going, and I want to, I have beats measured out about the big events that I'm aiming for, and that's mapped out in advance. And I think the fact that you're right, there is quite deliberately a lot of what we might see as cliches or tropes there. You said, yes, there's a hint of Mad Max, there's a hint of Matrix, there's a hint of every cyberspace novel, and from the cyberpunk thing you've seen, there's kind of there's the warrior, sort of the warrior in the warrior quest, which goes back to almost all of those kinds of baby cut on the river Styx and all that. There's every possible different sort of thing is there, and I didn't want to do any single one of those, as it were, straight. I didn't want to go, yeah, this is it. We're just simply sticking some Mad Max in here. It's like, how can I do that with a twist? Because I think if you deliberately line up all those different tropes, for a start, your book does not then become one trope. It does not become one. This is not just a futuristic Yojimbo. This is a lot of things all at once. But also, it gives almost invisibly, I hope anyway, it gives the reader kind of lots of reassuring handholds. There are lots of reassuring things as they go along, going, hey, I get post-apocalypse, I get cyberpunk, I know what virtual reality is, I learn more from Cub, I understand that. Do you know what I mean? They're not quite exactly that, but they are familiar enough for you to feel confident moving forward as a reader that you know roughly where these sorts of things should go, and then when they don't, it's fun. Whereas I could have gone, yes, this is a completely surreal future world where nothing is anything like anything you've ever seen before, and I think after an issue you've been going, I don't understand what's going on. I'm a little bit scared of where this falls. So that second issue with the Smart House, to me, that was almost like an episode of Star Trek. They beam down to the planet, and there's nothing there but a house. What's that about? That's if it's got that flavour, good. You know what I mean? Good. I'm glad it has, because I think it makes the reader go, oh god, oh yeah, this is going to be one of those stories. Oh no, it's not. I think that's kind of a fun thing to do. So yes, I have got the scope now of going, we could do anything. A lot of things are going, we're already doing everything. So let's take the time to do it. So I suppose one of the things I'm trying to do moving forward is kind of themes arcs around particular things. So we get something that's very much this, and then very much that. So if I was to characterise, that's going to freak you out. If I was to characterise the story starting from issue 6, it is kind of, it's kind of brutal, ultra-realistic, historical, meets sword and sorcery, with a touch of genuinely creepy fairyland. Whoa! Okay,
that one I didn't see coming.
Exactly. it's weird that it is sort of, it's almost all of those things, but it's not quite any of them, and therefore it's got an interesting mix. But it was that thing issue 6. You may have seen some preview pages where there's some Roman legionnaires in a woodland area. I don't think I would have done that if I didn't think that Juan would draw that so realistically. We genuinely believed that it was the year 450 BC AD, and it was the end of the Roman Empire in the north of England, and it was the last legion trying to retreat to a fortress before everything was overrun. Do you know what I mean? It had that feeling of realism, because it could just easily have been some guys in costumes, and then you go, I don't care. But it just, to me, it feels like that. It's that border outpost at the end of the empire, and the weather's bad, and they all want to go home, and they miss Rome, and that kind of stuff. And to me, that's got a real feel, because you think, oh my God, this is almost like a historical epic. Are these really Roman soldiers that have been left over since the beginning? And you go, no, because it's not that, because it's entirely artificial. But the point is, it feels more real than me pretending it's real. Oh my God, I've got so confused. But you know what I mean? It is that authenticity. And the idea that they would be living in the... to me, it's got to feel... Sorry, so that's got to feel of something like one of the TV shows like Vikings or Rome, or the British series Britannia, which was also about that sort of, so that sort of very gritty feeling of this is what history was actually like. And you expect there to be, in that kind of story, a lot of superstition, and there to be a kind of spookiness to the landscape, and that's where that kind of fairyland in the kind of bad fairy tale, sort of nasty, sinister, trickster thing, it enters the story, because there is that element to it. So that's the tone for the next couple of issues. It kind of gets creepy. And it's very much not Mad Max anymore. It's very much not that, but it fits, because it's just the next place he's arrived at. I fear that I've confused things much more by trying to describe that.
No, I'm so stumped now.
I'm gonna have to send you like a gift basket or something, because this is amazing. I'm so excited. Okay, all right. How do I? Okay, let me think. I don't want to try to plug spoilers. I have a bad habit of doing that. But okay, characters that we've seen. Let's go with that. So characters that we've seen that we can look forward to maybe in the future. One in particular I wanted to ask you about was including War Mother in Fallen World, and because she's kind of, I don't want to say obscure, but she's not like like the EXO and Bloodshot type where they're editorials like they gotta be in there kind of situation. So like, what went into your decision to include her in say like Fallen World, and then what could we expect to see with her character going forward in Rye? Okay, well, a number of things there. I'll try not to drop spoilers and stuff like that. There are so many characters, and she's one of them that I think would fit into this story really, really well, because they're just interesting and they're part of this landscape that we've got in the future. I was really pleased to be able to use her in Fallen World, and I intend to use her now in Rye. And actually, she would have cropped up in the next couple of issues, but I changed my mind. She's not. There's going to be a slight delay before we see her again, because there was a danger that she would sort of eclipse another character that we're going to meet, who not really similar, but they would have fulfilled a similar sort of role. And I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want that. So in the same way that I deliberately put Gilad and Geomancer opposite Ryan Rajin, because I wanted their similarity to be part of the story. We got to this bit and I was going, no, if I stick her in, it's going to be like, well, why aren't we just using her? Why are we using this other character as well? So I deliberately have sort of paused her return so that we can build this new character up a little bit and flesh it out and give it an interesting context. If I had my way, we'd be publishing 47 issues a month, and it would be every different aspect, and we have all the characters that we could possibly have. But yeah, she's high on my list. I think she's very interesting, and again, she's another character whose motivation, and completely justified motivation for what she does and who she represents, is in conflict with other people. And you don't go, oh, she's a bad person. You go, I get what she's doing. It's going to end in tears when she meets this person, because they both sort of want different things. But yeah, she's cool. She's a very cool character.
super cool. And I think we could pick your brain about this story for days just because of how much nuance is in it. I mean, it's true. Just more questions, but to get to the process of it, it sounds like you've got a lot of freedom at Valiant, which is really cool to hear because you've probably been around in the industry, so you know kind of how these companies operate. I want to see if you could touch on the process with working with Valiant and developing these stories as opposed to some of the others.
Well, first of all, right from the word go, Lisa and the editorial team have been incredibly positive. Asking to do it and saying, you've got complete free reign here and here and here and here. There's a world to be built. And then occasionally making requests. Can we specifically do this? Can we make the structure of Fallen World work like this so we end up with this? Everything I want to do, obviously I plan and plot out sort of arcs in advance and make sure that they're very happy with what they're doing. But there is a wonderful freedom because I am not crashing into these other things around me. There's not other books to bear in mind. I mean, bear in mind, just as a contrast, and again, nothing negative meant by it, but I've spent the last few years very happily working at DC, working on books like Justice League, Odyssey and Titans and Aquaman. And every single issue of those had to go through a complex approval process because the things I did could affect, and often did affect, the other books that were happening alongside it, and vice versa. And when I was on Titans, in fact, there was an almost disastrous debacle where something had happened in another book and editorially it hadn't been shared properly, and it was like Titans and several other books almost went, oh my god, what do we do with our stories now? We found a workaround because we all work, it's a kind of a team spirit, but you need that close connection, and just a small thing in one book can have a massive effect in another thing when they're all running side by side. With this, I'm not running side by side with anything, and so therefore, I think the Valiant team are sort of almost sort of daring me to come up with radical things to do. It's like, what can you do next? What's going to show? And that's great because there is that enormous freedom. It's almost like being on a create-your-own book because you can do that, set that world up for yourself, and I think that's why I'm sort of very conscious of the fact that I need to make sure it's still very visibly the Valiant universe, that I can't invent wildly, and that's why I want to bring these things through. But they've been very great. I can't think of anything. I would imagine my freedom would be less if I was doing a contemporary Valiant book. Quite clearly, because the things that happened in it would then affect the book around it directly. If I did, for instance, to Bloodshot, in a contemporary Valiant book, what I've done to him in Rye, people would be ringing me up and saying, I don't think you can do that. That's absolutely fine. You expect that. That is the process. You know when you're working in a essentially a shared universe that you need to play by the rules. You need to put the toys back where you got them from. Otherwise, the company will complain and the other creators will complain. So I know I'm lucky in that respect, but there are things that I can do that I can't do elsewhere. But they say they have me supportive. I'm trying to think now if there's anything significant that I have done so far on Rye where they've gone, oh, don't do that. And I don't think there is. It's cool. I think it's more a case of I've gone, should I do that? And they went, oh yeah, we're back to a bit more. So, and they've also been able to the actual storytelling ideas as well, which I think is really cool, because obviously we've seen Rye before and we've seen what he does before, we know what he's capable of, but I was struck when I was writing the first few issues, this idea that he would be so fast that we could barely see him moving, and it would appear that he was effortlessly affecting things around him when in fact it was just the speed at which he was functioning. And rather than trying to do that in a kind of like The Flash or something where we're seeing speedy multiples, I said, could we not do that thing? And you've seen that in the first issue where he apparently, the enemy's charging towards him, and he just apparently walks into them, and they're like flying in all directions. And Rajin says to the bartender, he doesn't appear to be doing anything. He goes, it's because you can't see what he's doing. And he looks as if he's just taking a stroll, but in fact, ultra fast, he's doing all these amazing things and dealing with them all. And I thought that would be something they went, oh no, don't do that. We haven't seen that before. We've seen him function in a different way before. But they went, no, that's so cool. Let's do that. And then in issue 6, again, and this was one actually, where something fairly similar happens. There's a fight scene, and he found a different way of visualizing the sheer speed and accuracy with which Rye moves. and he does it so effectively that when the pages came in, I went, oh my god, that's brilliant. That's that's fantastic, and that's also really cool because it's great to set your hero up as being incredibly capable, so that when the wheels come off, it's even a bigger shock. You know what I mean? When he comes up against something that is resistant to what we've established as being incredibly powerful, it's much more impressive when you realise there is a bad guy who can sort of stop him in his tracks. So yeah, I honestly can't think of anything, and more often than not, it was more a case of little suggestions like Lisa said to me, let's make the first couple of 2 or 3 issues of the series self-contained, essentially, individual stories. So we establish different parts of the universe as quickly as possible, show the range of the world, even though there's a progressive story going on behind that, a meta story of his quest. Let's do individual things. She wanted to see Lula back, and I was very happy to do that. I've mentioned that we're going to meet some Roman Legionnaires from issue 6 onwards, and she had remembered that it had been established there is a kind of Roman level to New Japan, where there was a kind of Roman arena type thing, in the same way that dinosaurs were built for entertainment purposes. And she went, that would be really cool to see that. And I went, yes, it would. And it immediately in my mind put that story, it framed that story up because it was something that I then wanted to do. So they're great. They're great at sort of giving suggestions and instructions and sort of and encouraging those things to go to their natural conclusions, really, I suppose, to really get the most out of the story.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so one. All right. Well, we could hold you here all day, but I think one last question I really wanted to ask is, so some of our viewers might not be aware, but back in like the OG Valiant days, you had a pretty significant run on Ninja.
Yes.
In like 1993, 94, 95-ish. So how has it been being back at Valiant this time as opposed to like in sort of the early days?
I suppose in many respects, it's a different company, but it's still the same universe. Those core values have not gone away, and I think that's the important thing. In fact, I'm kind of impressed that they have been preserved so brilliantly, because the Valiant universe is a younger universe. There will be always that danger that it hasn't got the same sort of sense of stewardship, that it's being preserved because it's cool the way it is, in the same way you get with, I don't know, Marvel or DC. This is Marvel universe, this is the DC universe, we look after it, these are the perpetual values of this universe, let's not do anything to shake up that status quo. With Valiant being a younger thing, there is always the danger that people go, oh no, we can do better than this, let's shake it all up. And it doesn't. And what I've always loved about the Valiant universe, I love writing superhero stories, but what I've always loved about the Valiant universe is that it seems to me always more realistic. The things that happen in it have a greater. I mean, I know we've got extraordinary high tech, and we've got immortal beings, and the supernatural and all that. I know, but it's all done in a kind of. It reminds me much more of the sort of stuff that is being produced. It's almost like a British sensibility, a British approach to the supernatural and to science fiction, sort of things that I do in 2000 AD. It's although there are superheroes, it's less obviously big costume superheroes doing things. It's more about the applications of technology and social change and outsiders in the community and all sorts of things like that. And so I always think this is the best way of picturing it. It's a really way of doing it. If a character gets thrown through a window, or a car crashes off over a cliff, in the Marvel or DC universe or any of the big superhero universes, that would be like a minor thing. That would just be a very minor thing, because it would by far away not be the biggest thing that happened in that issue. Whereas if a character in a Valiant book, if their car goes over a cliff or they get thrown through a window, it's a big deal. And I love the fact that it's a big deal, because that is a big deal. Try being thrown through a window. It's a big deal. Do you know what I mean? And even though we've got characters like Exo and Rai, come to that, and Bloodshot, who are capable of doing these extraordinary things, it is still a universe that's populated by heroes who are often human or near human. And to be shot or to be involved in an auto accident or whatever like that is an important thing that happens in their life. So to me, it has that degree of realism that I think is terrific and really valuable. So there is true drama, and it's not when you read these things you think of them as being less dramatic than a big superhero universe, because the Valiant storytelling style makes them dramatic, and I think that's why I love that, and that's why I'm so impressed that it's kind of got that same vibe to it. It's still got that same level to it. And where Valiant produces the wonder is in the depth of that imagination, the level of high tech. Things like the enormous connection to the past and to deep history through characters like the Eternal Warrior, for instance. You know, that idea of, you know, the time travel works through Ivar, but it works to a very particular set of rules. And, you know, weird things can happen. The fact that, you know, those sorts of things to me make it feel very different. I think the Valiant universe is exciting because there is a real sense that there are all sorts of stories that have never been told here before. The stories that maybe story types that have been told a million times in other universes. They haven't been told here before. So when they are told, they are a big deal. And that there are types of stories that can only be told here, because they wouldn't fit, they wouldn't work, they would contradict the laws of another universe. And that, again, is the appeal. So it's not just like a different comic company setting up its own universe and sort of, you know, we've got all the same elements that everybody else has got, we just call them different things. Not like that at all. It's structured in a completely different way, and therefore produces, I think, completely different stories. When you consider that Bloodshot, for instance, and Exo are two of the most important, prominent characters in that universe, they would, I mean, unless you compare Exo to Iron Man, which I wouldn't necessarily, but in another universe, they would be interesting support characters. They would not be the big stars. You know, they would be the, I don't know, the Peter Ray Bills and the Punishers of a universe that had bigger heroes in it. But I love the fact that in this universe, these are some of the most important people, and you get to really feel their importance, because in this world, they are supremely post-human. They are the most important people around, just by the very dint of what they can do. And to me, that gives the universe an extraordinary feel. And it means that when you read a Valiant book, you're going, gosh, almost anything can happen now, and I think I will be surprised. It's not that sense of it's another story where this hero's meeting that villain yet again, and we're going to have an homage to that, and then it's inevitably going to go to that place. And I think it's the youth and vigor of that universe that makes writing for it a really exciting thing. And it was back in the 90s when I was doing Ninjak and Shadow Man, of all things, and it certainly is now when you're doing these things again. The idea that we can do right and we can do new things with it is a very, very exciting prospect from a jaded author who's been writing since the late 1860s.
All right, I can't think of a better note to go out on. Again, I just really want to thank you for being here with us today. I mean, your work is phenomenal. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully we can do this again soon.
In fact, I would particularly love to, because if we give it a few months from August, so we get more into the next arc, and we maybe have like 3 or 4 more issues to talk about, I'd kind of love to come back and talk to you guys and see what your reaction is to the things that I've just kind of non-spoilery mentioned and said, I'm going to do something a bit like this, and you don't know what I'm talking about because you haven't read it yet. It'd be great to come back and pick that up again. So, you know, in the light of having now read these issues and seen these surprises, what do you think now, and what do you think that means? Because I think I think that's a useful thing, and it's always a useful thing. I mean, the object of me talking to you today is to get the good word out that Rise, a book that everybody should be reading. Go Valiant, yay, team! But it's also a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to readers and essentially fans of the Valiant universe, and to hear what interests them and what concerns them, what they like and what they don't like. And given that the best of times being a writer involves sitting alone in an office with a keyboard, and that's my only companion sitting here, and particularly now with sort of the pandemic and everything becoming much more sort of isolated, that's sort of it suits the introvert in me fine. I'll sit here and write a book or a comic book of my own, that's fine, I was doing that anyway. But getting that point of connectivity and having an animated discussion about stuff, I think is great, because sometimes just even hearing myself explain it to you, I'm going, check your own logic, does that still work? Hang it out.
Amazing.
Absolutely. We will definitely be ringing you up again for another to come on again. Especially like you said, after we get to see some of these things you mentioned. Because I'm gonna go run laps around my house right now while I try to calm down, because I don't think any of my family's gonna understand why I'm excited. I was gonna be like, dude, calm down. Like, I get it. Just relax for a second. But oh, holy smokes, so much great stuff today. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Is there anything in closing that you want to say to all of your adoring fans, Dan?
Well, thank you for being there. Thank you for reading. Thank you for immediately tomorrow going out and ordering pre-ordering the August releases of issue 6 and the trade and all that kind of stuff. And I think in a non-selfish way, thank you and for continuing to support comics generally, and therefore the comic shops that we all depend upon. They've had a very tough time over the last few months, and I hope that there are lots of Rye readers who watch this today and go, oh gosh, I must go and order my copy of it. But I also hope there's lots of people out there who are watching this going, I haven't heard of that comic before. Oh, maybe that sounds pretty cool. They seem to be talking enthusiastically. I'll try that, because in trying that, that's great for Rye, that's great for Valiant, but it's great for the comic shop because it's a new order they've got on a book that maybe they hadn't been tempted to try before. So yeah, get in there. If you can't get into your shop in person, most places are doing curbside pickups, or they're doing mail. My local comic shop here in Kent in the UK is basically been doing mail order. They send me a list of my pull list for the week, and I go, thank you very much, and I pay them by PayPal, and it arrives in the post. And then they send me a list of what else is going on and anything else. And that's a great way of going, because the comics industry depends upon all those independent retailers who have been hit very, very hard indeed. And if we want to keep reading comics, that's what we've got to do. So that would be my message today. Is think of the comic shop and order Rye. and thank you guys for being so enthusiastic in your questions and putting up with me yakking away for an hour.
It's amazing.
It's Monday, and this is pretty much probably going to be the highlight of my week. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty excited. Okay, so fanboying now. Okay, so thank you for joining us. But like I said, don't forget to pre-order Rye, like, subscribe, share this with all your friends, tell everybody. Rye is amazing, and it's going to continue to be so. And until next time, stay valiant.
Last match of the night. Yeah, let's see if I can beat Kobe with Dana White. My nigga Dana White. Yeah. Dana versus the world. This whole stream has been Dana White versus everybody you could think of. It's been so fun. Thank you so much for watching live or on the playback. I appreciate each and every one of you like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. I'd like to take a second to remind you that it's not too late to donate. You could still send me donos. Please send me donos to paypal.me/glacier8888. The publisher's waiting. The world is waiting. We're looking to begin production on issue 2 of SLED HEADZ, our debut IP to the world. Yeah. The gun, fu, supernatural, super Sentai rom-com of the ages coming to effect mass change, mass awakening on a global scale, worldwide, yeah, the funny books, they're getting their second wind. There will be a renaissance, comic books will rise again, and you can help us today by donating via paypal.me/glacier8888. Yeah, hail and welcome to the Ice Age. It's Big Glacier. Fuck they talking about. Listen, don't forget to leave a like and a comment on your way out. You could do that for the free. Yeah. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube's been unsubscribing, folks, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thank you very much for watching Gaming with Glacier UFC fo. And we getting up out of here. Until next time, Glacier out. Yeah.